The musician froze, then smiled. Fingers moved without thought, chasing something that hadn't existed a moment ago. A melody bloomed, unexpected and alive. In that instant, time dissolved, ego vanished, and the world shrank to a single fluid impulse. Creativity feels magical, but it's rooted in brain chemistry and networked chaos. Whether composing, painting, or solving a puzzle, the creative brain slips into a dance of structure and surprise. Neuroscience is beginning to map these sparks, revealing how constraint fuels invention, and how flashes of insight emerge from the quiet churn of the unconscious mind.
Welcome to Extreme Brains, the podcast that embraces the chaos of a world gone wild. I'm David Evanoff, along with my fellow brainers and chaos enthusiasts, Sam Goldstein and James Woods. We are broadcasting to you from the semi-luxurious Evanoff Studios, located on the west side of the over-industrialized haven of South Salt Lake City, Utah. South Salt Lake City, Utah, the only place you can be south and west at the same time. Each week we'll dive headfirst into the absurdities of modern life, sharing sharp critiques, unfiltered humor, and just the right amount of existential dread. Our tagline, 3 voices, 1 mic, in a world gone wild. Welcome, Brainers, episode 3. I'm excited about this one, music and the creative brain. And we couldn't have a better room to discuss music and the creative brain because some of the most creative people I know. Sam, tell us all about it.
As we continue our exploration of extreme brains, because the theory is that by studying the extreme, we better understand the majority, right? And we've talked about the extremes of all kinds of things, right? And you know, I was working on a piece for Christmas for my Substack, and I found 3 young people with autism, an artist, a musician, an Indian musician who sings these Indian naras, but he can't communicate with anybody. Just as an example of how the brain works and how little we know about it, and are those miracles, right? Are those kinds of things miracles? So now we come to the brain, and you know, our exploration is primarily the mind, not the physical brain. So we use the word brain because that's the term everybody understands. But really we're talking about the mind. And what is it about the physical brain that enables the mind to create something from nothing? Right? You create something from nothing. So that kind of creativity, and perhaps it's no more better represented in music because we could sing before we could talk. And we could draw before we could write, and we could all of these early creative activities by our hominid ancestors, ourselves and other human-like species, tells us that creativity and music in particular played a significant role in getting us to where we are today. And I would argue, while we've looked at some other brain-related traits like fear of difference or an aggressive response to threat, or the strong belief that some people have, even when facts are on the table, we've discussed how those phenomena contribute to why we as humans are here still and other human species are gone. But we've also talked about the fact that they don't work very well in today's society. It doesn't pay to be blindly belief-driven, outwardly aggressive, and afraid of anything different. Right. You can't function in the world. But here, creativity and music may be a pathway to our absolution, maybe a pathway to getting us through this period in time to where we can emerge in the Star Trek era.
I was just going to ask you, yeah.
Yeah, I once wrote Roddenberry a letter and just said, tell me how you got from where we are to that. But of course he didn't answer, because he doesn't know. I mean, how do you get from there to that? And today we have a guest with us, the blonde wonder, the surfer boy from California, the man who wears his clothes so tight that sometimes he requires oxygen, and a guy that I just love. Probably, I would say, and I've known a lot of guitar players, but I would have to say there is no more talented and creative guitar player and musician on this earth, and he wouldn't like that. Then, and we can look at a lot of great guitar players whom he can mimic and do more. And I know from personal experience, because Tommy contributed all the hard guitar parts for the album we just finished, and we've worked on other things together. So I'm excited to have Tommy here today. Tommy,
thank you, brother. It's a blessing to be
Tommy
here.
Hopkins.
Thanks.
Tommy
Thank you
Hopkins,
so much,
tell us.
It's nice of you to say all those things.
Well, they're true.
What an intro.
I only
Right?
speak truth. Tell us a little bit about yourself, because
Well,
you've had
let's
an
see,
interesting
give me
journey.
some more oxygen with these tight clothes, and maybe I can tell you something. I don't know. No. What do you want me to say?
Well,
what do
you've
you
been
want
on
to
a
hear?
fascinating journey.
Oh, yeah.
In which religion was once a central part
Yeah,
of your life.
very much so, yeah.
And I'd be interested in knowing, well, just a little bit more about where you grew up and how you
Yeah.
got to where you are, but also your opinion as to whether religion, with its own set of guidelines and controls to make everybody basically a similar Stepford Wives, if there's no difference, then there'll be no conflict, and how your experiences with religion and maybe what you ultimately decided about religion, did that make you more creative and a better musician?
Boy, that's a big question. Yeah, I love that. Well, I would say there are two very interesting factors to what you just said. One of them is that limitations often give more creativity. So, like Bach was famous for that. He was a very religious guy, and he would limit how he wrote music. Even he would try to, do things in groups of three to represent the Trinity and all kinds of different ways of, in his mind, glorifying God, right? And and I would say from, my point of view, if the sky is the limit as a guitarist or as a musician or as a composer, then creativity kind of goes, stops, because there's too much variety there. You can't hold all that in. Give me some limitations. Give me a key, give me a tempo, give me a groove, give me at least a genre or something to give me some limitations, and then all of a sudden, bam! I've got lots of creativity. And I would say, in how my religious background, fascinating. I think the most important piece that I would bring out here is that creativity stops when you're afraid to make a mistake.
That's very good. I like that.
So to that extent, religion can be a very damaging thing to creativity, but it can also, like I said, with Bach,
Can also inspire.
it can also inspire. So I love this subject, and if from my point of view as a human being, I'm so much more grateful and feel happier and much more a part of all of humanity by being outside of my religious background and not and looking at it for excuse my expression, the bullshit that it was. So other than that, I feel so grateful every day for not being in that.
So you think that unregulated creativity, whether it's music or art or whatever, without some guidelines, is impossible?
Well, I wouldn't say necessarily impossible.
Look at some of the...
But you at some point you have to define something or have some kind of focus in mind that you're doing
To go off of.
Otherwise, you're I mean, truly infinite. It's fascinating. I would say that I've experienced some how do I put it? I don't know how far to go with this.
Go.
Go.
No, I've done mushrooms before. I've had mushroom trips. I've done that in a clinical setting kind of thing, and experienced what to me was a mind-boggling opening of, wow, my brain is capable of infinite thought and infinite art and creativity. It's so.
That would seem to be the opposite, though.
Yeah.
The
Yes,
substance
exactly.
takes the boundary away.
Right.
I mean,
So there's a duality, is what I'm saying.
yeah,
So it's
but when you look at how we are all Darwinists here.
yeah, me too.
We are
Absolutely.
right, and not that evolution explains everything.
No, but
and it's not a substitute for believing in religion. Should you choose to have
Sure.
a belief in some higher order, but how come you mentioned Bach? How come he didn't invent rock and roll?
Right, exactly.
How come? Where did rap come from?
Right.
Where did and so when you go back, and you historically look at each time a new genre of music is created, how come? I mean, I didn't meet Bach.
Right.
Flava Flav didn't meet Bach.
Right.
Or the Beatles. So.
But they were certainly influenced by him.
Well, but that's
by
the
his
question
music, anyway.
is, so now that creativity is dependent upon the opportunity to experience something that came before you and then build something else from
Very
that,
much so.
right?
In
Imitation
fact-
is the greatest form of flattery.
In fact, I would put this to it. Remember the old adage, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, We used to say that back,
Yeah.
a lot of people, will
Sure.
still say that. But that truly is kind of the essence of creating new, when you think about it, new music is always adding more, either trying to be more sexually stimulated or stimulating or inviting or whatever, more, racy or fun or whatever, and finding new ways of attracting, and that exactly
Right, attracting. Because
Yes.
So the question is, if Bach lived today,
yeah,
would he be writing rock and roll, right? Because he would have the experiences of everybody that came before him. This idea of a collective unconscious.
Sure.
I don't think we're talking about that, because you have to really have the experience, right? But if we're all musicians here, and David is our prodigy child, because he was a child prodigy as a musician, believe it or not. So for him, he created without ever knowing what anybody else created. I mean, if you live in a vacuum, what would you create if you didn't hear that music, didn't see that art, weren't exposed to that ideas? How does that cultural contribution create? I mean, if the world ended tomorrow and then started up again 100 years from now, and 100 years from now people did not have access to any of these genres of music, would we be starting again with tapping on a stick?
Right.
Hey.
And would we have to recreate, that whole process? But let me just change gears slightly, because you could say, well, creativity, whether it's art or music or dance or whatever, is just this expression of some inner drive or whatever. But from an evolutionary basis, it has to have a purpose.
yeah,
Right. So we on one of our shows we talked about the evolution of intelligence, and most theories are that intelligence as a way of solving problems evolved because it helped women. Intelligent men solved living problems of staying alive, and so intelligence was a selected process, right? Humor. The theory on humor. I don't know if we've done a show on humor. We'll have to do a show on
to
humor.
do that. Yeah.
but humor, the evolutionary idea is that humor evolved because it attracted women.
Sure.
And to this day,
Absolutely.
women like humorous men. Men are quickly looking at other parts of their bodies, but women they want to laugh. I mean, the cultural thing is, the guy with the 8-pack or the 6-pack, whatever that is. But but that's a societal push,
Yeah.
right? That's that's not necessarily what women really like. So now we say, well, so let's say it's 50,000 years ago, and we're sitting in the cave with our partners and their partners, because maybe we were not monogamous. We've got this group, right? And you're thinking, you like this particular girl, she's particularly hot.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, well, how am I going to what can I do to get her attention? Well, I'll bring her a boar's tooth, and she can hang it as a necklace around her neck, right? I'll create a piece of jewelry for her. But maybe I'll sing a song. Now, you'd be lying, any of you, if you didn't say that on the first couple of dates with a new girl, playing the guitar and singing a song was an absolute home run. Absolute, right? Yeah. David played the accordion. He didn't play
Well, and that's why I stopped playing the accordion.
the girls didn't like that. Yeah. So creativity played a role in natural selection. That's why, because you could say, well, you're a good singer, but how does that help us survive? In today's society, it doesn't. You make a lot of money, but if the world starts to end, you have nothing to contribute, because you can't eat your songs, you can't, you can't swallow your song. You could be entertained for a short while, but you'll still die of hunger. So it doesn't make it doesn't make any difference. So I think when you look at the theories of music as a way of memorializing experiences, of communicating, music as just a cultural contribution to what your group is doing, music as a kind of a neural process in which the brain, the idea of people who stutter, Mel Tillis, he couldn't talk, but when he sang,
he didn't stutter.
Right. So the brain has different ways of processing music versus language. But I still think the ultimate reason it survives is because of its selection process. When Tommy plays the guitar, now, not to mention his beautiful hair and his hot clothing, not to mention all of that, but when he stands up there and plays the guitar, Tommy, you're now 61, 62?
62.
He's 62, but those of you that can't see him would think he was 32. But when you stand up there and play the guitar and you whip your hair around like that model, what was his name?
Fabio.
Yeah, Fabio. The girl, and you play a lick, the girls... So you're going to get the girls. So there you go. That's the reason.
It does work.
It does work.
It does. It's proven.
It does work. So so there you go. So it evolved because it played a role. And if you played the music, and you didn't play it well, or girls didn't like it, then you and I, we would be sitting here. We wouldn't be in a studio. We'd be sitting in a library because we wouldn't have any music. Yeah, imagine no music.
I like to think back on when I was a kid and what really turned me on to music. And a lot of guys will say, they started playing the guitar because they could get the girls, right?
Yeah.
That was a thing, But for me, music started when I was little baby, and my listening to my brothers play the piano and the violin and singing and all the music that was going on in my house. I would fall asleep under the piano, and I would steal my brother's records and destroy them listening to the Beatles over and over and over and again, etc. So for me, when I started playing the guitar, it had nothing to do with attracting women at all. I didn't even know. I was a little kid. I didn't, I didn't think of that at all. And in fact, it kind of surprised me when, I realized that was the case later on. You get 13 years old and you're like, hormones are raging and that becomes, a big part of it. But, back, I think there's something primitive about the music that is also a communicator in so many ways. This last week, you guys, I was in the East Cape of Baja, and Wendy and I had the experience of going to a Temazcal, doing a Temazcal ceremony.
Which is what?
So they heat up lava rocks to the point where they are glowing red, and they put them in a little hole that is covered by kind of an igloo-looking shaped, building, small building, and you kind of crawl inside and you sit down, and then they do this ceremony, and each of the, they have like these 4 spirits that they represent, the father, the mother, the fire. I can't remember all the fourth one. Actually, the fourth one is the fire. The third one was in silence, but they put this hot tea that they've prepared with all these different herbal medicines in it over the rocks to give it this steam, and you breathe in the steam, and you talk about your various, opening up your soul, to each other, and the person giving the ceremony goes first, and she was surprisingly, we don't know this person from anybody, she was surprisingly open and very, I sometimes feel shame, I sometimes feel this, and I sometimes feel that, whatever. And then she would, of course, start hitting a drum and singing. And I don't know, she was singing in Mayan. And she gave us rattles to shoo, 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 shoo. And the music was this that we were creating. We were just, doing this ourselves, and it was kind of spontaneous, really. And it just felt like it echoed this whole, it made me think of community and how building this music was for building cooperation.
Where's the mezcal?
Oh, mezcal. Yeah, I wish there was mezcal.
Mezcal.
Not tequila. No, there was no tequila or mezcal. But some people will
because
go
most cultures have, and before we take a break, most cultures have those kinds of
ceremonies,
sweat lodge.
Yeah, that's
kinds of
basically
ceremonies.
Yeah.
So most cultures create stuff like that. But again, music as a
that's it.
Music as a way of connecting people.
Yes.
And also, and I'll leave you with this before we take a break, but so I've been involved in making movies, and we'll edit a scene, say a guy and a girl talking about something serious, and we edit it, and then you try and play different music behind it.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's not what they're saying. It's the music
that's driving.
that drives the emotion. And if I play one kind of music, I feel a different emotion. If I play another kind of music, so the music is so much. There's so much more that we don't understand. And music, again, everything in the universe is waves. We've talked about this before. We're constantly bombarded with waves from space. Music is waves as well. There's something about that range of waves. And we come back, I'll tell you about this treatment for autism that is using music.
Yes.
So,
well, Leonard Bernstein was famous for saying music makes the unknowable knowable.
Yeah.
Something like that, he said. I can't remember the exact quote, but.
All right, we'll take a little break here, and during our break, enjoy some music produced and written by Tom Hopkins, and we'll be right back with you. Ladies and gentlemen and brainers, welcome back. That was the music of Tom Hopkins. This reminds me, listening to your stuff, years ago when I was working on films and commercials especially, we would have, for you young folks, CDs. I had libraries of CD compact discs.
Those are.
And that's right. and they would be just hours and hours and hours of music, and you would pick different kinds. And I would always open up these CDs, and there it would say, published by Warner, blah, 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 music by Tom Hopkins or Thomas Hopkins. And I was constantly using your music on commercials, on films. And that was years before we met, but
Thank you for doing
always
that.
remember
So he
your
owes you
name
some money.
there.
Oh, thank you for doing that.
And you produced a ton of stuff.
I did.
Tell us a little bit about that stuff.
Oh, gosh. So I was working with a company called Nonstop Music Productions, and Nonstop was a very fitting name for it. I barely slept, constantly in the studio. I think I've written nearly or maybe more than 1,000 pieces of music for television, film, and video games. And certainly more, I've done about 70 video games. But all the music for television was, short little, these 30-second things. And I think there's, well over 1,000 of those that I've done. I don't know how many.
You just got nominated for a Grammy, right?
I did. It was a couple of years ago for helping with the Hogwarts Legacy video game.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I was just on the team, and the other guys.
Dave is our multi-Emmy Award winner here.
Yeah, Dave.
So we kept talking during the break, and we touched on a couple of things.
Yeah.
One of them I mentioned about this thing with kids with autism. But the other thing, this idea, I don't remember how you put it. What did you say about music?
Well, I think I was. Are you talking about how life? I was out in the East Cape,
Right.
in Baja, and there's hardly any people there. So all I did, this was just yesterday. I just got back yesterday from this, and we were watching the whales. It's whale season, and we were listening to the birds and listening to the wind and the waves. And I love surfing, so I went down there to surf. But life is constantly communicating with things that are musical. And in fact, the birds especially, you really, but think about the whales too. I mean, the whale song is,
that's what we call it, song.
Yeah,
right.
It is song. Right. And so much music is
around you.
I can't even imagine life being life without creating music.
Right, and if the brain responds to music like that, again, putting music to dialogue and creating a whole different sense of emotion, and I would argue that in most theatrical, movie, stage productions, it's the music that really drives the dialogue, not the other way around. So if music is that integral in who we are, then it must have played an important role in our evolution. If you were someone who didn't respond emotionally to music,
I can't even imagine that.
Well, and it's interesting because I don't know that research has been done looking at, say, do people who are antisocial, who have no conscience, how do they respond to music, and can music change you? So there's one organization that's a franchise that sells certain music for your kids to listen to be better students.
Yeah.
And then there's Baby Beethoven, whatever that is.
Yeah. Baby Einstein.
Baby Einstein.
Which is all musical.
And then, play music while you're carrying the baby and put the radio against your stomach, And a lot of it is kind of silly, but who knows, who's to say?
Kids shows use music constantly.
Right. Mm-hmm. And music can easily be used to evoke emotion and to manipulate, and it's pretty interesting. So if it's so integral in who we are, it's ironic that we don't devote more time to it when we educate children, or that we don't devote more time to it in counseling. There's some studies. You guys know I do a piece for Psychology Today a couple of times a week, and one of my articles was about maybe we should sing in psychotherapy instead of talk. And I cited some research studies that show when you have people sing about what they're going through, what they're doing, they seem to respond better to the intervention. And it got thousands of readers, and then Psychology put it into their magazine that maybe we shouldn't talk in therapy, maybe we should sing. And again, it's not so much, I think, the words, but the notes. And it raises this whole idea with AI now, because we've had this discussion on TikTok. There are musicians who aren't musicians. There's music of people who are musicians, but the question is, if we said to an AI, here's 1,000 works, find us the combination and sequence of notes that evokes the greatest emotion. If you want somebody to feel sad, if you want somebody to be happy, right? Don't worry, be happy, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It's interesting because I think it's coming that we're going to be manipulated, in some ways by music. But what I wanted to tell you about is this, a friend of mine, Steve Porges, who's, if you don't know Steve, he has a theory called polyvagal, and he's pretty well known now. He's got this Polyvagal Institute. And the vagus, this old vagus and new vagus, is a nerve that it controls the heart, it controls the muscles of the face, it controls the ears. And the face evolved from the brachial arches of a fish. That's how the face evolved. So years ago, he wanted to see whether music would make a difference for kids with autism.
Fantastic.
So he tried different things, got nowhere. Didn't seem to make any difference. And then he thought, well, I wonder if maybe these kids hear differently. And he looked at how the muscles of their ears responded to various frequencies. Because you can do that. He invented a device that measures children's hearing when they're born in the isolette, how they orient to the sound. You can measure their evoked potentials, how they're hearing. In the brain, you could see the evoked potential when the music is processed, right? And what he discovered was that most children's ears, we've talked about socialization before, rest within the range of women's voices.
Yeah.
Because as a baby, that's who you got to pay attention to, because this guy is nice, he's not going to feed you. Right? And then he looked at these kids with autism and found that the muscles of their ears rested within a lower frequency range of predators. Which is why a lot of kids with autism are so sensorily defensive, hands over the ears, and right. So he thought, I wonder what I could do about this. And he has a theory called emergent function, and his theory is that you have the genes, but sometimes the genes need a harder experiential push from the environment. We've talked about this. So if you're not speaking, and I have you participate in an organized therapeutic program to learn to speak, and you speak, it means you had those genes, but they weren't turned on, meaning the protein that binds them, and experience releases the protein that binds the genes, and now you speak, which means you must have had the genes all along. So complex human behavior, polygenetic, requires a push from the environment to work. Some kids, it requires a harder push. So he took Disney music, and he compressed it, and it's very tinny, within the range of women's voices. And then he shaped the kids with autism to listen, put headphones on them, and he had them listen while they were playing with a therapist an hour a day. And he's got film of it. He actually treated one of the kids I sent him from my clinic. He was in Chicago at the time. And the first day, the kid's pretty oblivious. And the second day, the kid's kind of looking at the therapist that's trying to play with him. By the third day, the kid's playing. And it was fascinating because the parents reported that by the fifth day, the kid was changed. He's still autistic, but more responsive to the environment, had facial emotion, had responded to prompts. It was fascinating. And his theory in emergent function was that these kids have the gene for social connection, but because where their ears rest, the muscles of your ears rest within a certain range, where their ears rested precluded them from the opportunity of having that experience shaped of that's mom's voice and that's who's going to take care of me. And emergent function means you reset it, that you have an experience that resets something for you.
That's fascinating.
It's fascinating, and it never really turned into a treatment per se, for reasons that other than Steve's not a marketer per se, but it did change these kids. And I sent a younger kid and a teenager, and the teenager was interesting because the parents said when he came back, and he was clearly different when I saw him, when he would, this is a kid who was very bright, but he'd sit at the dinner table and eat, wouldn't say anything. This was a Mormon family with 5 kids. And he came back from this treatment in Chicago, and he sat at the dinner table, and the first thing he said was, "Hey, you guys want to hear a joke?"
Wow.
And he never said anything. So It's fascinating the role music can play, not just in binding us together, in building a culture, in expressing, kind of letting us, as you did in the Sweat Lodge, expanding our awareness of the world around us, but as a therapeutic modality. And in the hospital, there's always a music therapist, but mostly they come around and they sing with the kids, and there isn't any research to look at is it making a difference in their health. But maybe we're missing the boat. Maybe music really is a way of curing, or a way of taking us to a better life.
You've
I
spoke
think so.
many times about the brain lighting up, looking at the brain electronically.
Yeah, yeah.
And isn't it true that music lights up the whole brain?
I don't
not
know
just
about
a frontal or.
Yeah, I mean, the music comes in, and it registers in one spot, and then you interpret it. It goes to another spot, but I think it passes through emotional regulators of our brain, and that's why you get the emotion.
It seems to me that music teaches us how to feel and predict and even belong without even using words. So, to your point there, it's like perhaps it was teaching that child or inspiring those children, those autistic children. This is just a question, really.
Right.
How to belong, and how to maybe feel and be able to predict their environment a little bit so they're not so scared, or whatever. I'm not, I'm just
But
question.
again, it's interesting how music has evolved in our society as entertainment.
right.
Right? It's entertainment, and you look at other aspects of our society.
There was
that are
nothing
seen as-
entertaining about the music in the Temascal,
but,
for
right.
instance, to your point.
Right, but in our society, other things like the games children play is, again, assigned to sports, which is entertainment. Even
Right.
though we talk about sports
Sure.
as building character and building, but that's a more recent introduction of the role sports could play, and often that introduction comes because I need funds. So let me tell you, it's good for this, it's good for this, it's good for that, because you're more likely to fund it and keep it going. And other things are seen as academic. And so it's interesting that music and art and other forms of creativity are viewed as entertaining. And in some way, because of that, they're dismissed. And so you see schools today on tighter budgets, which the push for STEM, although now they say STEAM, but reluctantly put the A in for arts. But the first thing they eliminate, music, dance,
Yep.
the first thing.
Yep.
And you think, no, maybe we should just get rid of reading. Who needs to read? Nobody needs to read anymore in our world.
Good point.
Let's move on, folks, to something else. I
wonder if it's more of a incapacity of our some of the teachers, they don't know how to do it. They don't have this education, or they don't recognize the importance of it and don't know how to actually teach it to the children. And sometimes, for when I was in high school, I went to a high school in Los Angeles that is now a magnet school for the arts. And it was actually a magnet school for the arts before, but it was because they had such great teachers in the arts program. And I remember the music history teacher telling us about Palestrina. It was a music history class. And he played the music for us of Palestrina after, telling us about a little bit about him. And I tell you, everyone in the class was not just tears in their eyes, they were sobbing.
Yeah.
They were sobbing. They were so moved. I don't know, that's a music history class and teenagers, et cetera. It's not autistic children, but there's got to be something there, that we can use.
And music, as you point out, about a lot of parts of the brain, the default, we call the default network of the brain, which involves prefrontal cortex and part of the back of the brain and the parietal and the hippocampus. So how that developed, why? Okay, so this guy's hippocampus isn't as involved, but this guy's hippocampus is more involved. He's a better musician, so he gets the girl and you don't. But you're right, and that default network in the brain is associated with not just creativity, but daydreaming, thinking about yourself and the place in the world, remembering the past, imagining the future, engaging in internal dialogue. It's not one organ in the brain. They call it the default mode network, right? And I don't know that we really understand it, and I don't know that we really understand how the different parts communicate or work together. We have theories. Well, this part is thinking about yourself, and this part is autobiographical memory, and this part is perspective taking, but I don't think they're modules like you plug them in and plug them out. I don't think it works that way.
So, in a sense, then it could be genetic, because you could have passed on those brain traits, that acceptance, that understanding of the sound. Somebody mentioned about my little one, much like Tommy. She sang before she spoke.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's probably really common.
Right.
And I have to wonder if one of the things that's hurting our education of our children on music is the problem with the teachers themselves fearing making a mistake. Fearing the whole idea of, they have to be better at it or something.
Too rigid.
For instance, when you're learning these days, when you're learning the piano or the violin particularly, the written notes are so important. They're everything. They're the world. And if you make a mistake on them, I didn't learn music that way.
I didn't either.
Yeah. Right,
James? I took piano lessons. Absolutely hated it.
Yeah. I did too.
I did better at piano and after I quit lessons.
I would actually pretend.
Creative. Yeah.
Did you do this? I would pretend I was reading the music. I had already memorized the dang thing.
Yeah, that's the child who memorized the pictures and pretends they're reading it. But if that default network is the creativity part of it, what Tommy's talking about, the other part of it is this executive control system that puts the boundaries on it. Right. So working memory, planning, inhibition, processing sensory information, attention, detecting errors, helping switch, And so when you build in those two parts of the brain, I thought I had my sound turned off here. When you build in those two networks, and they're in a flow state, they're working really well, then you effortlessly create and modify and adjust and get feedback as you go. But it's not one part of the brain. As you point out, it's these two systems. I'm glad you brought that up, and those two systems are made up of related parts of the brain, not just the prefrontal cortex, but also the back of the brain, as well. So it's a really complicated process, and so then you step back and say, well, so maybe one of our shows next year will be the 10 greatest mistakes we've made because our brains let us down. And one of them is we really don't stop and say, how did we get here? And what got us here is what's important, and we should cherish it and nurture it and not think we're too smart for it. Look at what's happened in terms of race relations over time. It makes no sense. The color of your skin,
Right.
The shape of your face, these are minor variations that are the result of the diaspora of our species from Africa and where we ended up living. But they have nothing to do with really who we are.
Right.
And yet look at how, over thousands of years, that belief that your skin makes you a different person, your skin color, your facial features make you a different person, how that's dominated society and culture, right?
Sure.
And I think music is another one of those. Well, Tommy, what are you going to be when you grow up? Oh, Dad, I'm going to be a musician. Tommy, let's get serious. You got to do something where you can make some money. Musicians don't make any money. As opposed to him saying, Tommy, that's so wonderful, because think of all the people you will help and inspire and touch with your music. No, we don't say that until you're Manuel Miranda and you can make millions of dollars touching people. Then it's okay. Then it's all right.
Well, it's interesting. There's those two different parts. I know, I used to teach a songwriting class, and one of the things we would talk about is the importance of just free writing, right? And turning off the judge in our brains. Just
not easy to do.
Not easy to do, right? And in fact, I have this theory that the reason why great music was written on LSD and marijuana is because it turned off the judgment center of their brain and let them just freely write and create without judging it too quickly. Now, you can always judge it later, but perfectionism is one of those horrible things that ruins creativity. But reaching for perfection is not the same thing. Of course, you want to reach for perfection, but you kind of have to have this moment of free writing, and in fact, so many people talk about this. I remember, recently hearing Kenny Loggins talking about how he would say to Michael McDonald, before writing a song, they'd just written a really big hit, and that puts pressure on you, like, oh shoot, we got to come up with another big hit, and what they would say to each other is, let's go write a stupid, horrible song. Let's just write something dumb. Just write something, anything. And it could be really a bad song. Let's just write a bad song. And in fact, I used to play guitar for Donny Osmond, right? And he, if he were here, he would be the first one to admit this. So I'm not saying anything behind his back. He would say, he had a extreme anxiety for going on the stage. He truly had stage fright. Particularly during the time where he was in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, he felt like every night he had to be perfect. And one night he was really suffering with this anxiety and just didn't want to go on stage at all, would not go on stage. And the director asked his wife to come in, and she goes into him and she says this. She says, Donnie, do us all a favor and put on a mediocre performance.
Right. The expectations are, they get you in a lot of trouble.
Stifling.
Right? All right. Well,
Let's take a little break here. We got some more music from Tom Hopkins. I hope y'all enjoy. We'll be right back with segment 3. Welcome back, Brainers. Segment 3. That was music by Tom Hopkins. Woo! That's great to hear. Hey, Sam, let's summarize a little bit and figure out just how we're going to solve. We're always solving the world's problems. How are we going to do it with music?
Yeah, and remember, our tagline is, what would a dog do? Right? What would a dog do? But if there's a consensus that music is so intertwined in who we are, then who we're going to become and who we will be can't ignore that music. And I think what we've covered is that music played a role in natural selection. If you were musical, you got the girl, as it were. So sexual selection. Music may have played a role in a way for people to cooperate. You think of the men singing on the chain gang, as it were. It's a different way of pushing and expressing ideas. Maybe the brain itself is music, that neural reward that brings about by music, and maybe it pushes that kind of plasticity and creativity. Again, the music we create today, we argue, was built on the music that was created before, and in part because we could hear that music. It'd be interesting to do a survey of, say, popular rap musicians and ask them, growing up, did they listen to classical music? Did they listen? And I'm always impressed sometimes when I talk to somebody who's in a very specific genre that, in fact, they've listened to lots of music.
Oh, yeah.
And
Dr. Dre is famous for his listening to a lot of great jazz.
And they know
That's why his samples were the coolest.
That's right.
Right. And they know music. So if creativity, particularly musical creativity, is a way of connecting minds, of solving problems, of bringing consensus, if a different part or parts of the brain have to work cooperatively, because those two networks I just talked about, they do lots of things for us besides just creativity. But specifically with music, if your brain has to work differently, there it is. Your brain works differently on music. If that's the case, then maybe those kids who have their earbuds in all day and are listening to music, they know something the rest of us don't, assuming they're not listening to just heavy metal, although maybe that heavy metal has something to offer, I don't know. But
It does.
But maybe they know, that it does something for them, and maybe we should think more about what music can be done. Remember, I joke that there's a part of our brain that lights up and our empathy turns on when we're holding a baby. And I've joked that we should make everybody in Congress hold a baby while they debate what to do, right? But maybe they should sing. Maybe there should be today's session, you have to sing. No talking. Well, I can't sing. Well, tough luck. Do the best you can.
Right.
Well,
it's also, you mentioned your patients. I read about Alzheimer's treatments
With music.
with music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is powerful.
So it definitely is unleashing something.
I like Tommy's, he touched on it a little bit for, I think maybe all of us in this room. We didn't start playing music or start loving music because we thought we were going to get girls. You touched on the belonging.
Right.
For me, growing up, I didn't really belong with any group.
Right.
But as soon as I found music, I found a belonging. And why that is or why it touched me that way, I don't know, and why it touches other people, but a sense of belonging. Even being in a band is like being in a gang.
Your tribe.
Your tribe, like
Yeah.
your gang.
Yeah.
But that's very different. I think that's very different from everything we've talked about. So here we're talking about using music like math or science or Future Farmers of America, or as a way of shared interests, bringing people together.
Sure.
Right.
And it
Right.
does a good job
and
of
that.
that.
And it
Right,
plays
it
that
does.
role. But I would argue that's an ancillary role. That's a secondary role. That isn't why music evolved.
Right.
It evolved because somehow it gave us survival value.
Right.
Whether it's sexual selection, whether it's problem solving, whatever the case may be. Again, it's an astounding. I always wanted to do that experiment of letting people listen to or watch, or I would start with listening to a dialogue, a conversation between two
Right.
people, and then playing one style of music or another style of music behind it, and asking people, what did you feel?
Oh,
Right.
right.
It's
What
like
did you
music
feel?
is the predictor of what
It drives it.
Drives
it
it.
clearly
Drives it.
It clearly
it's like
drives it.
it's like it tells you what the emotion is.
Should be. Yeah.
Right, or
Even
it leads you to
despite
conclude it.
what they're saying.
Right, that's my point. Is
Yeah.
despite what they're saying, and you've seen the jokes where they're singing something that they're fighting about, and it seems funny when they're singing it,
Right.
even though what they're singing about isn't.
Right.
And look at Miranda. There is absolutely no reason that Hamilton should be such a gigantic hit. I mean, I like the music, and I think the actors work very hard in the show,
Yeah.
and it's kind of interesting, but there's no reason it should be so crazy and over the top. And I think the reason is because it's operetta. And it exposed operetta to people who otherwise had never heard operetta. And they don't talk, they sing. And the words hit you differently when you sing them than when you say them.
Well, it's kind of like this. The brain doesn't really want perfection. It doesn't care about the perfection. It cares about meaning. And curiosity thrives where the curiosity is safer than your judgment.
And I'm going to just modify that by saying the mind.
Yeah,
Because I don't think the physical brain
Right.
gives a shit.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think the physical brain
Yeah,
cares
yeah.
one way or the other.
Absolutely. That's what I mean,
And
yeah.
that's the other thing. So when you go in that sweat lodge and you have this experience, it's maybe there's some plasticity that changes the physical brain, of course, but the reality is it's really about the mind.
Right.
It's really how the mind is changed by these experiences.
Absolutely.
And that's what's so fascinating to me. And I think we have just scratched the surface in the role music, especially music. I like all forms of art.
Sure.
Look, even jewelry, right?
Sure.
Or even you'll get a
Absolutely.
kick out of this, right? So sometimes I see young kids who wet themselves during the day.
Yeah.
They should be old enough. They're 4, and they still wet their pants.
Right.
And this, I'm amazed how well this works. And I'll tell Mom, does he like a particular cartoon character? Oh, yeah, he loves SpongeBob. I said, okay, go get on the web, order him 6 pair of SpongeBob underwear with SpongeBob on the front across the crotch,
Yeah.
and tell him, if you have a wedding accident during the day today, you can't wear your SpongeBob tomorrow. That you have to be dry on Monday, you wear SpongeBob on Tuesday. Dry on Tuesday, and I'm astounded how well it works. Now, for little girls, it doesn't. Barbie underwear didn't carry it. But a necklace, a Barbie necklace, right.
Wow.
So there,
wow.
so there, yes, it's a reinforcer. It's kind of operant conditioning, but the bottom line is it's art. That underwear is art. That necklace is art. And I think we've just not even scratched the surface in how art and music
Play a role.
could play a role in our future. And I think as we think about schools 50 years from now, I have a project called Inside Out Schools. The white paper for that is on my website that I wrote for the Hinckley Institute here. What will schools be like in 50 years? And in that model,
Curious.
arts will play a much bigger role. Whether you're a maker of it or a receiver of it, whatever the case may be, I think art's going to play a very big role. It needs to play a big role in who we are in the future. And, Mark Cuban has joked that AI is going to get so developed we won't have to work. Well, you better find something to do in all that free time. What are you going to do? Art.
Write a song.
Write a song.
Write a song.
John Williams was famous for saying that music can elevate us and transport us, make us feel something beyond ourselves. So it's kind of like you were saying there with, our music is almost like a social glue, but it also dictates what we're feeling, or tells us something. I don't know. It's so powerful for understanding our own human existence that I don't know that there's any better way to, than through the arts to understand.
Right, and
who we really are.
But so I have a
life,
question for all of you, because we all make music. David's most recent musical addition is Evie's question of the day. I love that. And the very end, with Dr. Sam Goldstein.
She walks around the house singing that part.
Really?
Dr. Sam Goldstein.
So we started a series in which I ask Evie a question of the day. I liked her recent one. If you had a button and pushed it, what would it do? And her answer is it would fall off. It was pretty funny. Well, next time we'll make more of those. So I recorded 20 of them. Evie, here's your question of the day. And you cut it together like she's looking at me. And then she gives you this, this answer. You put up 3 or 4
Today's
of them.
was good.
What's today's? I didn't see today's.
It's
The
world.
Oh, yeah. Where does
or
the
the
sun
earth.
go?
When the sun
And
goes
what'd she
down,
say?
where does it go?
Where does it go?
And what did she say?
She said it goes in the earth.
In the earth.
Yeah, isn't that smart?
And then she said, because the earth is mad.
Because the earth is mad.
Wow.
Wow. And then we asked her why the earth was mad.
And then
and she thought hard about it and said, can I have some chips?
Yeah, change the subject.
Yeah.
Yeah,
First
very
rule.
good. Yeah, very good. But I have a question, Tommy.
Yeah.
So, and again, I preface this because we're all musicians here. So, the moment before you create something, do you know you're going to create it?
No.
Right.
No.
So where does it come? So where does it come from? What's the? I mean, again, I'm a scientist. I don't think everything can be explained, but where does it come from? Now there's MRI research to show that you can predict a few milliseconds before somebody's going to do something. That the brain begins to work it up, and then you do it. You could predict it, right?
Right.
So where does it come from? Sometimes I'll pick up the guitar, and I'll just start playing some chords, and all of a sudden I'm playing something, and Sherry will go, "That's pretty good. What is that?" And I'll go,
Right.
"I don't know. Where'd you come up with that? I don't know." Right.
Exactly.
So what?
It's back to the frequency thing.
So how does that work? How does it work?
Well, and even I would just add to that it's even better sometimes when you don't have a guitar in front of you and you're not, limited by what you can play or what,
Right.
Your fingers are
If you can hear it.
naturally doing or whatever.
Right.
You just hear something in your head and you just start. I had no idea I was going to go.
Right.
I don't know. But where does it come from? I would have to say part of it definitely is the collective amount of everything I've listened to or heard or been exposed to in my life. All of us. I mean, not me personally, but everybody. But
Well, and it's a part of your way of thinking
sure.
for most of your life.
Yeah. And I mean, Paul McCartney said something like, I don't sit down to write a song. I sit down to play.
That's big difference.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it really, having the mindset, I would put it this way. Creativity is a mindset. It's not necessarily a talent, or it's a way of being. It's and probably the most important word of that is the feeling of play. Openness, play.
But if we take the other extreme and say, no, the universe has rules.
Yes.
And there's no just kind of, I'm just going to play. That there's, like you mentioned, this kind of operant conditioning. B.F. Skinner says there is no thought. There's only behavior based on experience. Even if you think there is thought, I reject that. But this idea that, so at any given moment, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to create something. And some of what I do is based on what I've heard before. Right. But is any of it completely novel? In our theory of intelligence, the word is simultaneous, which means you see how all the pieces fit together.
Right.
And good critical thinkers leave no pieces out. Right. Mm-hmm. So if I said, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, you only need to know 10 to predict 12. If I said 1, 3, 6, 10, 15, to know it's 21, you have to simultaneously see all the pieces of the problem, right? And I think, kids, as they mature, develop the ability to do that. This, a couple of weeks ago, is doing puzzles with this younger child, and one of the puzzles is a dog. And there's the back legs, the body, the front legs, and the head. And he puts the legs together, and it's kind of a shortened dog. And he holds up the piece, and he looks at it, and he looks at me and says, "Oh, there's an extra piece." Right? Wow. Right? Because he didn't appreciate you got to use all the pieces. And I think creativity is taking all the pieces that everybody has and finding another piece that very few have, that you find in the nether somehow, and bringing it in
to make it something.
And using it. And I think in an operational way, that's what creative people do. And so when you
absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, so when you sit down to play, you play a note, and somebody else might play another note in that scale coming next, and you skip 2 notes in the scale and play the 4th note, and all of a sudden you've done something different that other people didn't think of doing, right?
Absolutely.
And so I think in an operational way, in the equation of, well, what is creativity? It's using all of your experiences, not plagiarizing, but somehow melding them together with a spark. It's almost like that. What's the term for the spark when the first organism started on Earth, right? That they in the primordial ooze. It has a word. It's escaping me now. That there's some spark, and all of a sudden there was life. Right, and which is why I had this debate over Thanksgiving dinner with our kids, because a couple of our kids believe that the universe is so vast there has to be other living species out in the universe, and they're probably here because you've seen all the stuff going on about space and you unidentified flying objects and the universe is so big that the chances of, if there were other intelligent species, them finding us or us finding them is like finding a grain of sand in the beach. It's pretty much impossible. And then the other part of it is even if they did find us, why would they care about us if they're so advanced? Why would they be flying around? And why would they hide? Why wouldn't they just land in the middle of Yankee Stadium and say, "Here we are, come and get us"? What's the But again, it's
they wouldn't be making crop circles and
right.
things.
Right. But
we
it's
assume they're always going to
astounding.
be bad, or
it's astounding how we believe we're a species that's driven by belief. It's how we survive.
That's right.
So we look at all this stuff, and my intelligent son-in-law, who has a master's degree in business, says, "Well, did you see that documentary? They all say they saw this, and they all say," I said, "Well, they all say they saw Bigfoot. You think there's a Bigfoot? No. But you think there's aliens just flying around, living among us. And now we flip the coin before we end and devote a little bit of time to the damage of creativity. Now, music, I don't think there's any damage, even if you're a...
I get what you're
that
saying.
band, Sabaton, the heavy metal band from Sweden that does these? Do you know that band?
Yeah.
I love their songs because you can understand the words, but it's still heavy metal.
Yeah.
And they tell stories of war.
Right.
And, they're great. I love them. A kid turned me on to them, believe it or not. One of the kids
great.
I see. But, so I don't think music could do harm, although... They used music in concentration camps. They used music sometimes, to try and get people's minds off of what was happening to them. But think about creativity when it comes to conspiracy theories, when it comes to all this information. Well, I challenged
Adding something
my
that's
son
not there.
to stop and think how much of what you're telling me you've seen in the movies. Right. And that's the collective. I would argue that a lot of what most of us think about the world is shaped by the entertainment we've watched. Right?
Sure.
And so creativity has the potential to lead you astray, to make you believe things that aren't true.
Yeah.
The ultimate creativity was the belief that, my religion's better than your religion, and so I'm going to destroy you.
Right.
That, in a sense, that's creative thinking, So while I think we have spent an hour singing the praises of music and creativity, we also have to understand that there's potentially a dark side. And you've seen the movies where they hypnotize people and they say, when you hear this little tune, then you shoot the president.
Yeah, right.
And they use music. Right. So with all the good, we have to be vigilant to the potentially not so good.
Well, and also manipulation. I would, is what I think you're getting at is music can be used as a manipulation.
And all forms of creativity, and it is.
Absolutely.
And it is. So, well, we've now explored another fascinating aspect of the human brain and mind.
That's right. And I want to thank Tom Hopkins for being here with us. Thank you for sharing your music and a little bit of the vast talent that you have.
And we use the word, just so you may not know, you've heard David use the word brainers.
Yeah.
We have nominated it for edition in next year's Webster's Dictionary.
I love it.
You're a brainer if you listen to Extreme Brains podcast and like it. If you don't like it, then you're not a brainer.
You're an extreme brainer if you're a guest.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, thanks for coming, Tommy. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Tommy.
I love you guys. So
thanks for being here. Thank you, brainers, and thank you, Tommy. We're going to go out today with some more music by Tom Hopkins. This is A Beautiful Life, beautiful guitar work, and vocals by Tom Hopkins.
Ooh, you make me love you. Same way too. Ooh, and we always come together, 'cause we can't deny we have a beautiful life. Beautiful life. We have a beautiful life. Beautiful life.
Just because we said it doesn't mean it's true. You're on your own.